These 8 advanced English words will sharpen your fluency and your IELTS, TOEFL, or Cambridge score. And you won't just memorize them. You'll meet each one inside the story, feel what it means, then prove you caught it. That's how your brain keeps them for good. Rupert Thorne, the most feared art critic alive, had ended 100 careers with a single sentence. So when he stopped dead in the middle of the Henley Gallery, went pale, and began to weep before a yellow mop bucket, the entire art world held its breath. And not one of them dared to be the one to tell him the bucket was the cleaner's. For 30 years, Rupert Thorne's reviews had been law. Pompous, severe, and utterly certain, he could make a young artist famous or finish them forever with a single cruel line. Tonight he had swept through the grand new exhibition with his nose in the air. Finding it all, he announced, competent and therefore worthless. The pompous critic had not been moved by a single piece, until he reached the corner by the fire exit. There, where the cleaner had left it 10 minutes before, stood a galvanized mop bucket, a gray mop, a pair of yellow rubber gloves, and a half-eaten cheese sandwich. Brenda, who had cleaned the Henley for 20 years, had simply set them down to go and find her glasses. She had no idea that she had just created the most important artwork of the year. Thorne stared at the bucket for a full minute. Then his lip trembled. "Remarkable," he whispered. Here, at last, was honesty. Here was a savage, beautiful comment on the forgotten labor that holds the whole glittering art world up off the floor. He deemed the mop and bucket the only true work in the building. He deemed it, on the spot, the masterpiece of the show. The room held its breath. And then, terrified of being the fool who disagreed with Rupert Thorne, the entire crowd began to gush. Collectors gushed about its raw, honest truth. A professor wept openly. Reporters scribbled. No one in that whole pretentious room dared admit they were looking at a bucket a cleaner had left by the bin. They crowded around it. They scrutinized the angle of the mop, the meaning of the half-eaten sandwich, the bold statement of the rubber gloves. Critics who had once scrutinized the world's great paintings now bent low over a cleaning bucket, nodding gravely, hailing every drip on its rim as genius. The whole pretentious circus grew louder by the minute. Then Brenda came back for her bucket. She found a crowd 30 deep around it, a famous critic dabbing his eyes, and a gallery owner sweating through his suit. "Excuse me," she began. "That's my—" And the owner seized her arm. "I, the artist!" he cried in a panic. Every head turned. Rupert Thorne himself stepped forward, took her cleaning roughened hand in both of his, and hailed her before the world's press as the most important new voice in modern art. Now Brenda had not cleaned art galleries for 20 years without learning exactly how these people talked. She looked at the trembling critic, looked at the cameras, and made a decision. She kept a perfectly straight face. "Yes," she said gravely, "it is about the weight we all carry and the mess we leave behind." Thorne gasped as though struck. The crowd gushed, and Brenda, who had come back only for her mop, found herself hailed as a genius instead. The bucket sold that night, mop, gloves, and half-eaten sandwich included, for a sum that made Brenda sit down very suddenly. Somewhere beneath all his certainty, Rupert Thorne surely suspected the truth. But the pompous critic had staked his great name on it before the entire world, and his pride could no more admit a fluke than it could fly. So he doubled down, called Brenda a visionary, and swept out into the night with his reputation polished and intact. In the far corner, a young painter named Leo watched the whole charade with his mouth open. That very morning, Thorne had called Leo's life's work competent and therefore worthless. Now the same great eye was weeping over a janitor's bucket. Leo had spent years terrified of critics like Thorne, and in one ridiculous night, he was cured. If a fluke with a mop could be hailed as the masterpiece of the year, then the lofty judgments of one pompous man were a charade, and Leo would never lose another night's sleep over them again. As for Brenda, she bought a little house by the sea and framed the check on the wall, the only piece of art, she liked to say, that had ever paid her back. Now, and did you catch all 8? Let's find out. A verb meaning to praise something far too much, with wild enthusiasm. It's how fans go overboard, pouring out praise for an idol. The terrified crowd did this over the bucket, calling it pure genius. The whole crowd began to do what? Pour out wild praise over the mop as if it were a treasure? The word is gush. Everyone gushed over the new baby, calling her absolutely perfect. A verb meaning to publicly praise someone as great or important. It's what crowds do when they greet a hero as a champion. Rupert Thorne did this to Brenda before the world's press. Thorne did what to the cleaner? Publicly praised her as the most important new artist alive.
The word is hail.
Critics hailed the young director as the finest of his generation. An adjective for someone self-important, grand, and full of their own importance. It describes a person who talks down to everyone, puffed up with pride. Rupert Thorne was exactly this, severe, lofty, and sure he was right. The what kind of critic, grand and self-important, announced that the whole show was worthless. The word is pompous. The pompous official spoke as if no one else's view could matter. A verb meaning to judge or officially consider something to be a certain way. It's what a judge does in deciding that a thing is good, fit, or worthy. Thorne did this to the mop and bucket, calling it the only true art. He did what to the bucket? Judged it to be the masterpiece of the entire show.
The word is deem.
The committee deemed the old bridge unsafe and closed it at once. A verb meaning to examine something very closely and carefully. It's what you do bent low over tiny print, studying every detail. The critics did this to the angle of the mop and the half-eaten sandwich. Experts began to do what? Study closely, each drip on the bucket as if it held deep meaning.
The word is scrutinise.
She scrutinized the contract line by line before signing it. A noun for a surprising result that happens purely by lucky accident. It's the unlikely win you score by chance, not by any skill at all. The whole masterpiece was really one of these. A cleaner's mistake? The greatest artwork of the year was nothing but a lucky what? A pure accident?
The word is fluke.
Winning on his very first try was a complete fluke. An adjective for trying to seem far more clever, deep, or important than you are. It describes someone who shows off with big words and fake sophistication. The whole art crowd was this, gushing over a bucket to seem profound. No one in that what kind of room, full of fake sophistication, dared admit they were staring at a mop bucket.
The word is pretentious.
The review was so pretentious that no one could understand a word. A noun for a ridiculous pretense that everyone goes along with. It's an empty show that fools keep up while pretending it is real. Young Leo watched the whole one of these with his mouth open. Leo realized the great critic's judgment was a complete what? A ridiculous pretense? The word is charade. Their friendly meeting was a charade. Both sides had already decided. Quick recap. How many do you still remember? Gush.
Hail.
Pompous.
Deem. Scrutinise. Fluke. Pretentious.
Charade. A new English story every day. Subscribe and master advanced words the way your brain actually keeps them. Inside a story you won't forget.